When I was 10, Mama packed me off to live with Daddy. His place sat on the far side of town, and I didn't know a soul except the folks he spent time with, a single mother and her 3 kids. Her oldest daughter, Renee, was 12, a little older than me, with the kind of easy laugh that made you feel less like a stranger. We weren't close, but through the years we found ourselves orbiting the same circle of kids, bike rides, summer games, church cookouts. One December night, my buddy Marcus was over at Renee's house with her and her younger brother. Their mama was on a late shift, so the kids were alone. It wasn't supposed to be anything more than laughter, soda, and TV. Then came the knock. Marcus swore it was their mama, 'cause she always tapped the door a certain way. He opened it without thinking, and that's when everything shifted. Marcus wasn't supposed to be there, so the moment the door swung open and he realized it wasn't Renee's mama, he panicked. He slipped out the window, sneakers hitting the grass, and tore off down the road toward his own house. He didn't look back, but the woman at the door wasn't some neighbor. She was the sister of a lady Renee's mama had been helping through her job at the clinic. Folks whispered that the sister had been in and out of institutions, that she wasn't steady. Somehow, she'd pieced together where Renee's family lived, what shifts her mama worked, and when the kids would be alone. That night, she stepped inside. The details after that, I never wanted to know. What I do know is Renee's little brother managed to run barefoot to the neighbor's house and call the police. But for Renee, it was already too late. I still remember how the news spread like smoke through the neighborhood. Daddy got the call first, his face going hard, lips pressed tight. He wouldn't tell me right away, just muttered something about trouble at Renee's. Later, I pieced together what happened from whispers and newspaper clippings folded too many times. They said the woman came in calm, almost gentle, like she belonged. But before the night ended, the house turned into a scene nobody should have ever witnessed. Renee was found in the bathroom, her life stolen a week before Christmas. The way folks described it, decapitated, her body left like some twisted message. I couldn't bring myself to believe. The police searched the house for hours, even dug through the wrapped presents under the tree, and that's where they found the rest. I wasn't allowed at her funeral. Mama said it was no place for a child. But nightmares don't care about rules. For weeks after, the house across from Daddy's felt hollow, like it was holding its breath. The porch light never came on again, and the laughter of kids playing tag in the yard vanished overnight. I'd walk past and quicken my step, eyes fixed straight ahead, because I couldn't stand to imagine Renee's voice silenced inside those walls. At school, nobody said her name out loud. But in the hallways, whispers crawled. Some kids swore they'd seen her shadow in the windows. Others claimed she'd show up in their dreams, face hidden behind a curtain of black hair. Grown folks shook their heads, said children just made up stories to explain things too heavy to carry. But late at night, when I lay awake in Daddy's house, I'd hear tapping at the door, soft, almost patterned, the way Renee's mama used to knock when she came home. Only Daddy was already asleep. I told myself it was just the wind, maybe a tree branch, but deep down I knew better. That knock had rhythm. 3 short, 2 long. Exactly how Renee's mama did it. I never answered, just pulled the blanket over my head and whispered prayers the way Grandma taught me. Lord, keep us covered in your blood. Keep the shadows outside. One night, though, I gathered enough courage to peek through the living room blinds. The porch was empty. No footsteps in the snow, no figure waiting in the dark, just stillness. But the knock kept coming, night after night, always the same pattern. Daddy said I was dreaming, that my nerves were still raw from what happened. Maybe so. Yet when I asked him why the cat hissed at the door each time, his jaw tightened. He said nothing, just turned off the lamp and told me to sleep. But I didn't. The winter air inside Daddy's house felt colder than outside. I'd lie awake listening for that knock, counting heartbeats between each one. Some nights it didn't come, and I almost believed it was over. Then, just when I started to drift, the sound returned, steady, patient, like it knew I was waiting. One Sunday after church, I asked Renee's little brother what he remembered. His eyes went flat, like shutters slamming closed. He just said, "She don't like when you open the door," and walked away. That was all. No more, no less. That night, I dreamed of Renee, standing in the hallway. Her hair was wet, dripping onto the wooden floor, her hands clutching a ribbon that trailed red. She opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came. When I woke, the blanket was damp beneath me, and from the porch came the same knock, 3 short, 2 long. Waiting. I wanted to tell Daddy about the dream, about how real it felt, but his face was already heavy with the weight of things unsaid. He spent more time polishing his badge and less time looking me in the eye, so I held it inside. That week, the neighborhood gathered for Christmas service. Candles flickered, choirs sang, and still, I couldn't shake the feeling that Renee was near. While the preacher prayed, I saw a movement by the back doors, just a shadow, long and thin, sliding past. Nobody else seemed to notice. When I got home, Daddy was asleep in his chair, Bible resting on his chest. I crept to my room, but the knock came again, louder this time, like whoever it was grew tired of waiting. I pressed my ear to the wood, and for the first time, I heard a voice whisper through the cracks. "Let me in." My whole body locked up. That voice wasn't Renee's mama. It was thinner, sharper, like something stretched too tight. I backed away from the door, heart banging so loud I was sure it would wake Daddy. But he kept snoring in the recliner, dead to the world. I whispered a prayer under my breath, the same one Grandma used when storms shook the windows. "Lord, make my enemies stumble and my steps sure." The voice came again, softer this time, almost pleading. "Cold out here. Open up." I squeezed my eyes shut, but curiosity pulled me toward the blinds. The porch was empty. Snow drifted across the steps, untouched. No footprints, no shadow, just stillness. I let the blind snap back, trembling. That's when a knock returned, this time from the back door. 3 short, 2 long. Whoever or whatever, it knew the whole house. I ran to Daddy, shook his shoulder, begged him to wake up. His eyes cracked open, weary and bloodshot. "Ain't nobody out there," he mumbled, brushing me off like I was still 10 and chasing nightmares. He shuffled to bed, leaving me alone with the silence. But I knew what I heard. The back door rattled once, then quiet. I sat in the dark living room, clutching the cross Grandma had given me. Hours dragged until dawn painted the sky gray. The next day, I walked past Renee's old house. Curtains drawn, yard overgrown. It looked abandoned, though I knew her mama still paid the bills. Something in the upstairs window caught my eye. A figure, thin, pale, hair hanging like wet strings, stood watching me. I blinked, and it was gone. That night, before I could settle, the knock came again. Front door first, then the back, moving closer. The sound traveled through the walls like it was circling me, testing every lock, every seam of the house. I wanted to scream for Daddy, but my throat felt sealed shut. The knock stopped, replaced by silence thick enough to press against my skin. I crept to the hallway, each step creaking under my weight. At Renee's funeral, folks said the spirit of someone taken too violently might wander, unable to rest. I hadn't believed it then. Now, I wasn't so sure. Halfway down the hall, I froze. Our cat sat crouched by my bedroom door, fur bristling, tail puffed like a bottle brush. His eyes locked on the gap beneath the doorframe, low growls rumbling from his chest. Then I saw it too, a shadow sliding across the thin line of light, moving inside my room. But I hadn't opened that door all night. I backed away slow, heart knocking harder than any sound on the doors. The cat hissed, then bolted down the hall, nails scratching wood. I wanted to follow, but my feet stayed planted. From inside my room came the faint scrape of something dragging, like nails across the floorboards. I whispered, "Daddy," even though I knew he was asleep in the other room. No answer, just that slow, steady scrape. Summoning what little courage I had, I eased closer and pressed my ear to the door. The air was cold, colder than the rest of the house. Then, clear as day, a voice whispered my name, drawn out, cracked, almost playful. I stumbled back, nearly tripping. When I glanced down the hallway, I saw the blinds in the living room sway as if touched. But every window was shut tight. Whatever it wasn't trapped outside anymore. Sleep became a stranger after that night. I dragged through school, eyes burning, too afraid to close them when I got home. Daddy noticed, but didn't press, just poured himself stronger coffee and muttered about overtime. Maybe he didn't want to know. Maybe he already did. One evening, I found the cat crouched again at my bedroom door. Same spot, same bristle of fur. This time, instead of running, he pawed at the crack, meowing low like he wanted someone to answer. I scooped him up, but his body was rigid, eyes wide on something I couldn't see. Later, while brushing my teeth, I caught a glimpse in the foggy bathroom mirror. Over my shoulder, a figure stood at the end of the hall, wet hair clinging to her face, dress hanging like torn paper. I spun around, toothbrush falling to the sink. The hallway was empty, but the mirror still showed her. I wiped the mirror clean with my palm, scrubbing until the glass squeaked. Nothing, just my tired face staring back. But the moment I turned away, I felt her presence, heavy, damp, like river water seeping in my lungs. I tried telling Daddy. He shook his head, muttered, "Don't let grief play tricks on you," and went back to his paperwork. But I wasn't grieving, I was being haunted. That night, I dragged a blanket to the living room, thinking maybe if I stayed near Daddy's chair, I'd be safe. Sometime after midnight, I woke to the sound of wrapping paper crinkling. I sat up, pulse hammering. Across the room, by the small Christmas tree Daddy kept for me, the boxes shifted. One by one, the presents slid across the floor, pushed by hands I couldn't see. And then, through the branches, I saw her eyes watching me, waiting. The ornaments trembled on the branches, catching glints of the streetlight. I froze, every breath shallow, afraid one sound might draw her closer. Then came that same knock, 3 short, 2 long, but this time it echoed from inside the walls. I grabbed Daddy's Bible off the coffee table, clutching it so tight the leather creased. Grandma always said the word was sharper than any blade. I whispered verses I half remembered, stumbling through psalms, my voice shaking. The knocking stopped. For a heartbeat, I thought it worked. But then, the tree lights flickered, casting shadows across the room. One shadow lingered too long, stretching taller than it should, taking form. She stepped forward, dripping wet though no water touched the carpet. Hair clung to her face, and in her hands she held a ribbon the color of blood. She lifted it toward me, lips parting, ready to speak. But no sound came. Her silence was worse than any scream. The ribbon dangled from her fingers, dripping with something unseen, and I felt a pressure in my chest, like the air itself thickened. I wanted to run, but my legs buckled beneath me. Then, faintly, I heard Renee's brother's words echo in my head. "She don't like when you open the door." I realized too late. I hadn't opened the door, but I had opened something else. My fear, my attention, maybe that was all she needed. The figure tilted her head, eyes dark pools reflecting the blinking Christmas lights. She moved closer, leaving no footprints, yet the boards creaked beneath her. I clutched the Bible tighter, whispering, "The Lord is my shepherd." Her lips twitched, forming shapes I almost recognized. Then, just as her hand reached toward me, Daddy's voice thundered from the hallway. "Who are you talking to?" I jerked my head toward Daddy. He stood in the hallway, hair mussed, gun in one hand, eyes sharp despite the late hour. I turned back to the tree. Nothing. Just twinkling lights, presents stacked neatly where they'd always been. I saw her, I stammered, pointing at the empty space. Daddy's face softened for half a breath, then hardened again. "Don't feed it," he muttered, setting the gun on the counter. "That's what it wants. Fear." He sat beside me, heavy hand on my shoulder. "You hear knocking again, you pray. Don't answer, don't look. Just pray." I nodded, though my throat felt tight. Daddy turned off the tree lights and went back down the hall. The house grew quiet, too quiet. But as I lay down on the couch, I heard it again, 3 short, 2 long. Only this time, it came from inside my bedroom closet. Waiting. I froze, blanket pulled to my chin. The sound was faint but deliberate, like knuckles rapping wood from deep inside my room. My chest ached with every breath. I wanted to run to Daddy, but his warning echoed, "Don't feed it." So I prayed. I whispered every verse Grandma drilled into me, fumbling the words but clinging to them like rope. For a moment, the knocking stopped. I almost believed it was gone. Then came the scrape, the slow drag of something heavy shifting inside my closet. My cat hissed from the hallway, claws clicking against the floor as he darted past. Gathering courage I didn't feel, I crept toward my room. The door was cracked open, just enough to see shadows moving. Not mine. And then, from the dark, her voice seeped through, low and broken. "You left me here." Her words slithered through the crack, chilling me deeper than the winter air ever could. "You left me here." My hand shook, but I pushed the door wider. The closet door stood open, just a black square in the wall. Inside, the shadows writhed like smoke. I wanted to scream for Daddy, but something in me whispered that if he came now, he'd see her too, and maybe she'd never let either of us go. So I stood frozen, watching. The air thickened, heavy with dampness, and then she stepped out. Renee, but not Renee. Her face pale, eyes hollow, hair clinging like she'd just been pulled from water. She clutched that ribbon still, holding it out toward me. "You forgot me," she whispered, voice cracking like glass. Everybody forgot. Tears burned my eyes. I wanted to tell her she was wrong. But before I could, the lights flickered and went out. Her words slithered through the crack, chilling me deeper than the winter air ever could. "You left me here." My hand shook, but I pushed the door wider. The closet door stood open, just a black square in the wall. Inside, the shadows writhed like smoke. I wanted to scream for Daddy, but something in me whispered that if he came now, he'd see her too, and maybe she'd never let either of us go. So I stood frozen, watching. The air thickened, heavy with dampness, and then she stepped out. Renee, but not Renee. Her face pale, eyes hollow, hair clinging like she'd just been pulled from water. She clutched that ribbon still, holding it out toward me. "You forgot me," she whispered, voice cracking like glass. Everybody forgot. Tears burned my eyes. I wanted to tell her she was wrong. But before I could, the lights flickered and went out. Morning brought no peace. Sunlight streamed through the blinds, but the carved knocks on the closet door stayed, raw and splintered. Daddy ran his thumb across them, jaw tight. "Ain't no fixing what once it's marked," he muttered, almost to himself. I wanted to ask if he believed me now, but the weight in his eyes said he already did. Instead, he told me to get dressed. We drove across town to Grandma's, her small house smelling of sage and fried catfish. She listened without flinching, nodding like she'd heard it all before. "Spirits tied to pain don't leave easy," she said, laying her hand on my head. "But the Lord's stronger than anything lurking in the dark." She pressed a vial of anointing oil into Daddy's palm. "Mark your doors. Pray without ceasing." That night, oil glistened above every doorway. Yet still, as midnight neared, the knocking began again. The oil shined faintly in the lamplight, each doorway marked like a shield. Daddy paced the hall with his Bible open, reading Psalms aloud, voice steady as stone. I curled on the couch, clutching the cross from Grandma, whispering along. At first, the house stayed quiet. Too quiet. Then slow and deliberate, the knocks returned, front door, back door, closet, windows, everywhere at once. Wood groaned as if the house itself was answering back. Daddy's voice rose louder, fierce, calling down every promise of protection he knew. The air grew heavy, pressing on my chest, until suddenly the temperature dropped. My breath clouded before me, and then I saw her. Renee stood at the end of the hallway, dress dripping, ribbon clenched tight. But her face had changed. Behind the hollow eyes, there was something pleading, almost childlike. She raised her hand toward me. "Why didn't you save me?" Her words cut deeper than the cold. I wanted to shout that I was just a kid, that I couldn't have done anything, but the guilt pressed hard, like maybe she was right. Tears blurred my sight. Daddy stepped forward, voice booming. "That ain't Renee. That's a lie wearing her face." He lifted the oil-stained Bible high, reading scripture until the walls shook. The figure staggered, flickering like a candle in wind. For a moment, her features softened. Renee's smile, the one she'd flash when skipping rope in the street. Then the smile twisted, teeth sharp, eyes black as tar. The lights burst, plunging us back into darkness. I clung to Daddy's arm, his words still rolling strong. From the closet, the carved knocks thundered again, louder than before. 3 short. Too long. The sound carried through every wall, every floorboard, until the whole house seemed to breathe with it. The sound rattled the dishes in the cabinets, made the pictures tilt on the walls. I pressed my hands over my ears, but it still pounded inside my skull. Daddy kept praying, his voice rising over the chaos, sweat rolling down his brow. Then, through the storm of noise, I heard another sound, soft, steady humming. Grandma's hymn. The melody floated warm and sure, though she wasn't even there. I clutched it, sang along through choked breaths. There's a balm in Gilead. The knocking faltered. The shadow at the end of the hall flickered like smoke. Renee's face wavered, caught between rage and sorrow. She clutched the ribbon tighter, then loosened her grip. It drifted to the floor, curling like a snake. Her form thinned, stretched, dissolved into the dark. For the first time in weeks, the house fell completely silent. But silence can carry its own dread. For a long moment, we stood in the quiet, hearts still pounding. Daddy lowered the Bible, breathing hard, sweat glistening at his temples. I sank into the couch, clutching Grandma's cross so tight it cut into my palm. Then the house sighed, wood settling, pipes groaning, the ordinary sounds of home. Yet I couldn't shake the feeling that something lingered, just beyond sight. Daddy knelt in front of me, his eyes steady. "She's not your burden," he said firmly. "You hear me? Spirits feed on what they steal from the living. Don't give her nothing else." I nodded, though my body trembled. Still, as he spoke, I noticed the ribbon lying on the floor by the tree. Faded now, no longer red, but pale, almost gray. I bent to pick it up, but before my fingers touched, it crumbled into dust. The knocking didn't return that night, but silence has a way of holding its breath. Morning sunlight spilled across the floor, brighter than it had in weeks. The carved knocks on the closet door were still there, but they looked smaller now, powerless. Daddy brewed coffee, humming low, the way he used to before all this. For the first time, the house felt like home again. We drove back to Grandma's that Sunday. She anointed our foreheads with oil and prayed over us, her voice steady, her faith unshaken. "What's bound on earth is bound in heaven," she said, pressing my hand. The Lord carried her soul. What you saw was only the shadow left behind. That night, I slept in my room, door cracked just enough for the cat to slip in. No knocks, no whispers, only the steady rhythm of my own breathing. And though I'll never forget Renee, I know this much: shadows don't own the light. We were delivered.